Deathrattle Shaman in the early going of this new meta has proven to be a pretty powerful deck in my opinion, and I've been really enjoying playing it. There's not super complicated decisions that we have to make with this deck, but it is fun, and it's beating some of the weird stuff as people are still experimenting. Before we go any farther, I want to take a quick look at the deck, talk about some of the cards and why they're in the deck. So first of all, we have to understand how this deck wins games, and the way that we win is by developing our board. We want a nice wide board. We want to go as wide as we possibly can, because the way that we're going to win the game is either buffing that wild board with the Shadow Suffusion. It's going to be a death rattle. Each time one of those minions dies, it's going to shoot off 3 random damage, and it can't hit our opponent in the face, which is good for us. Or with that really wide board, we're going to be able to buff it up with Bloodlust. So really the deck is built in a way that's going to allow us to be able to build that wide board and then keep it as wide as possible. So in the early game, you can see here with the 1-drops, we've got Trog, we've got Scourge Troll, we have Spawn Pool Forager. 1-drops are really important in the deck. We want to be able to hit the board early and often so that we have lots of targets for those buffs as we get those in our hand, and the other synergies that are available. So Trog speaks for itself. If your opponent's playing spells, you go nice and wide, you get lots of Trogs here. Schooling is just a nice inclusion. It's a little bit of removal. It also gives us cheap minions to be able to combine with some of the other synergies in the deck I'm going to talk about as we get down there. Scourge Troll, insanely powerful 1-drop. We always want to keep this in the mulligan. This is probably the best keep that you can possibly have. So in your opening hand, if you have, say, Scourge Troll and a Spawn Pool Forager, you would likely toss the Spawn Pool Forager and try to find something else to go along with the Scourge Troll here. So things that can go along really well with it, of course, Deathweaver Aura. I would keep this if I had the Scourge Troll in hand in the mulligan, and I reasonably expected that my opponent would not be able to remove this 3 health minion just because of absolutely how powerful this is. It's just a really strong combo. We would also want to keep the Veercool Necrolite. This card really strong when you have a 1-drop to be able to land that Death Rattle, get a 2/2 with Rush, and it's even better on the Scourge Troll because that's going to give us 2 2/2s with Rush. Again, keeping our board wide and giving us the ability to be able to remove minions on our opponent's side of the board. Those things are really good for the deck that we're going to be playing. I like keeping Clownfish here just because it allows us to be able to play extra minions. Clownfish is especially good with Amalgam of the Deep. We can play Clownfish. This is then free, and we get to discover another Murlock. Potentially, if we play this on turn 3 and maybe we have access to an Amalgam, we're able to actually put down 3 minions on turn 3, again staying wide. That's really good for the game plan for this deck. Hawkstrider Rancher, one of the most powerful cards in the deck. If we have this, we want to get it down on turn 3, just because every minion that we're able to play after that is going to be getting buffed with an additional 1/1, and it's going to leave a 1/1 body when it dies. And again, it's just really powerful to have those leftover minions on the board. Even though the minions that die with this Death Rattle are only 1/1, we can give them more damage by landing the Shadow Suffusion or with the Bloodlust as well. So very, very powerful card. If we're on the coin, we want to get this down on turn 2. It's just insanely strong. Shadow Suffusion we've already covered. Unliving Champion, really powerful if an undead minion has died after the end of our last turn. Being able to summon 3 3/2s for only 3 mana is really, really good value. Again, it goes wide and it gives us lots of minions to be able to buff up, either with the Shadow Suffusion or the Bloodlust. I know I'm repeating myself a lot, but you kind of see the theme here. We would never, ever want to play this card 3 mana for a 3/2, unless it was later in the game and this was the only card in our hands and we just wanted to spend mana and absolutely had to do something. Otherwise, we save it until it's active. Murloculate, nice inclusion. A lot of times this is going to be free from being infused. It's also a Murloc, so it's going to get discounted by Clownfish. That could be important to keep in mind. If we need to get an extra body on the board, it'll be able to take advantage of that. Although we don't really want to use it, sometimes you're in a position where you just kind of have to, but a free Murloculate, also a little bit of healing. Again, it's just really good, and especially if you get it for free, the 3/4 body is really, really good value. Bloodlust we already covered. Warlock Ravager, really the only draw in the deck, especially when combined with Clownfish, being able to play this for only 3 mana. Again, it can allow us just to refill our hand a little bit to be able to go wide, and that gives us more Murlocs in hand to potentially be able to combine with Firements or Flurgle. And then, of course, we're running Rotgill. Again, this is just a really strong card, and it takes advantage of the wide board. Our entire game plan is get bodies on the board, keep them on the board, go wide, and then if the Rotgill comes down, it's able to give a Death Rattle to every single minion on the board, that when it dies, it's going to give 1/1 to every other minion on the board. So you can see this deck is built to go wide, stay wide, and then take advantage of being wide with Shadow Suffusion, Bloodlust, and Rotgill. Right off the bat, we're going to talk about the mulligan for this deck. I'm keeping Scourge Troll. I'm going to get rid of these two guys. Other cards that I would want to keep in the mulligan here, one drop is really important, so I would keep Trog, Scourge Troll, Forager. You don't want to keep Schooling because that's not actually a minion. If I had a Spawn Pool Forager in hand along with a Troll, I'm going to get rid of this little Murlock right here and just hang on to the Troll. I would also keep Deathweaver Aura only if I had the Scourge Troll in hand, and you reasonably expect that your opponent's not going to be able to remove this minion. Being able to land this on the Trog, Death Rattles happen twice, so then when it dies, we actually get 4 3/2s. That's really good. We would also keep the Vircool Necrolite. The Death Rattle's really strong, especially if we have a 1-drop. Clownfish is a keep. Hawkstrider Rancher is a keep. We want to be able to get this down as early as possible. It's really powerful, especially if it sticks on the board. And then we would also likely keep Rotgill here. If I was on the coin and I had the Scourge Troll in hand, I would probably also keep Unliving Champion, just because whenever that Scourge Troll dies, we'd be able to summon 3 3/2s for only 3 mana, which is really strong. And we see our opponent off to a nice start here, and unfortunately, we're left with just a hero power. Next turn, we're going to go ahead and get down the Hawkstrider Rancher, and then we're going to go from there as far as the game plan. And our opponent actually making some pretty strong moves early in this game. This is actually really interesting. Hawkstrider Rancher is really, really powerful, but just because of our top deck being able to buff this and then make a trade and getting 3 3/2s on the board, or I'm sorry, 4 3/2s on the board, it's just too good to pass up. That is going to overload us 1 for next turn. And I'm going to go ahead and preemptively hit into this, so hopefully we can get a nice trade here. Next turn, we are only going to have 3 mana, so could be a Hawkstrider Rancher, could be a Shadow Suffusion. We'll take a look and see what our top deck is. But actually, these are undead, and so is this. So again, we're just going to be able to go really wide with the 3/2s here. So we're just going to go ahead and take these trades. It'll clear our opponent's side of the board. We're going to push the 3, and then we're going to get down this guy, and then of course we're going to get down our infused Murlock here. We're going to pass it back to our opponent. So next turn, potentially, we're just going to be looking at Amalgam of the Deep and Shadow Suffusion to be able to land that on as many minions as possible. Our opponent actually deciding to swing face here. That's a pretty interesting choice from them. Schooling is also interesting just because we're going to have some synergy with Hawkstrider, Rancher, and Schooling. So one of the things that you're going to notice with this game, this is an extremely powerful turn 3 play, but because of the way this game shaped up and some of the other synergies that we drew in our deck, we actually went away from that game plan, and I think it's been working out pretty well for us so far. So just a note there, there's no such thing as a universal rule. You're not going to be doing exactly the same thing in every single game, so we want to free our mind and make sure that we're thinking about all the possibilities and the things that we can do. We're just going to go ahead and stick with our plan to do this. And I think we just want the cheaper minion. None of those options great. And then we're going to Shadow Suffusion, and we're going to punch our opponent for 12. So now, every time one of these minions dies, it's going to shoot off 3 random damage, could potentially hit our opponent in the face, which is really good. The way that we win with this deck is we go wide and we land that buff with Shadow Suffusion, or we're wide like this and we're able to buff our board with Bloodlust and actually just find lethal damage in that way. So pretty much this is the way that we're going to play every single matchup. We want to develop our side of the board. We want to keep our opponent's side of the board under control. We want to make sure that we have initiative, that we're kind of controlling the pace of the game. That's what they call tempo. I'm sure you may already be familiar with that term. And then we just want to look for ways to be able to set up lethal. And our opponent here, unfortunately, looks like they may actually just have to bow down out of this because they are not killing us here. And you can see we actually win the game against somebody still playing Shockspitter Hunter. So Undead Shaman performing really well for me. I suggest that you might want to get out and try it if you have the cards. Thank you for watching. I'm Uncorrupt.